Welcome back to another Lovecraft Country review and recap. So, as always, I will begin with a spoiler-free review before diving into a full spoiler recap. So, this is funny. The last episode, I gave an A, despite the fact that I had to force myself to watch it again to take notes for the video. Watching it was so uncomfortable and unpleasant, but there was just no way that I could deny that it was a great episode. This one? No problem watching it a second time, but also it did not feel impactful at all. The show, it varies in tone and genre from episode to episode. There is a plot through line, but this episode feels so completely different from the last one that it's kind of hard to believe it's the same show. The last episode was terrifying and heavy, depressing. This episode was, well, it was not scary to me at all. And I say that as a self-diagnosed coward. And I actually think they were going for another heavy and dark episode, but it didn't land for me. Trying to think of why, and I think it's just the nature of where this episode is in the through story. I think, although I'm not sure, and I'm not looking things up, I'm just trying to be as unspoiled as possible, and there is a book out there, so I'm like intentionally not looking up stuff on this book. I think that the next episode, though, is going to be the season finale. This is episode 9, next episode is 10. 10 seems to be like an HBO finale thing, which means that everything is building towards the next episode. So this episode was tying up all the loose ends that needed to be tied in order to leave the final main plot free to take center stage, which meant that I didn't feel any concern for our characters here. And a lot of the more tense moments, they felt very artificial, like they were manufactured to me. I was pretty sure how things were going to conclude and even how certain scenes were going to go, and I was just right every single time. So I just couldn't feel that invested. Although predictability isn't always bad. Like that Indiana Jones episode, also pretty predictable. And that horror ghost in the basement episode, also really predictable. But I enjoyed those ones, even the one that scared me. This one, it felt very paint by numbers in a lot of ways. So this one's gonna get the lowest grade for me. It's getting a C+. It's average, or I guess slightly better than average, because I'm still very much along for the ride, and I want to know what's gonna happen next. But this episode just felt like it was getting ready for what happens next. And so from here on out, I'm going into a full spoiler recap. If you haven't watched the episode, go watch it and come back. So we begin with our crew, like they're surrounding Dee and arguing over whose fault it is that Dee got messed up in the last episode. Why? And we see her lying on the sofa with she's got a mummified arm or something. And they're trying to think of a solution. And Tick suggests calling Christina and trading her the pages for her help. But Letty reveals that she's already given these pages to Christina. And then there's an argument where we see that, Tick and his dad know that Letty's pregnant. And Letty, of course, and Ruby know that Letty's pregnant. But neither of these twosomes know that the other twosomes know. Whatever. Ruby decides that she's going to ask Christina because Christina will help for her. And she's right. Christina comes and, she's looking at Dee's sketches and is all, I can tell from these that the curse is a combination of blah, 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 blah. So I guess that's why they showed Dee drawing the ghost girls. If that mystery is going to be solved by a throwaway line, then I don't know why they bothered. Why did she have to draw it? Why? It's a nothing thing. But okay, it feels very perfunctory to me. Christina says she needs the book of names in order to release the curse because the police captain, he sealed it with his body. They tell Christina that the captain is dead because of a gas explosion. And I don't know why they're lying to her here. It makes no sense. She knows about the monsters. She also knows that Tick did a protection spell. I don't know. Anyway, Christina says that she can, reset the curse to sort of reset the timer on Dee's life. But eventually, Dee is going to die. They tell her to do it, and she says she'll do it on one condition, that Tick willingly go to Artem, that's the place from the first episode, on the autumnal equinox. And he agrees. So she says she'll do it later. They need to prepare by drawing symbols around the house, and they'll need the blood of Dee's closest relative. So that would be her uncle Montrose, right? But of course, here my spidey sense went, oh wait, because if Tick is George's son, then that would make him Dee's brother, which would make him a closer relative, so bet that's going to come up in this episode. After the opening credits, we are with the police captain, and we finally get a good look at what's going on with his torso. He's got a black person's torso with his head, like, stitched onto it. He's Frankenstein, I guess. He's screaming in pain as wounds magically open on his chest. And his underlings, I guess, are unsure what's going on because they have done the spell the same way as they've always done it, but they don't know why it's not working. And they can't keep killing black people because they can't keep covering it up. William comes in and the underlings are like, how are you alive? But the captain knows it's Christina. And William goes over to the captain's desk and pulls out that rock thingy that Ruby put in there in episode 5, I think, and says that he, realized that regeneration, which the captain was using as like a, live forever thing, could also be a curse, that the captain could have to die over and over again. But he's decided to just settle for the one death and he just watches the captain die. And, okay, I've been on the fence about whether Christina William is a good or a bad character. They seem to have been very aware that the captain was murdering black people in order to create his body. And they cursed him in a way that would result in more and more black people getting murdered. I don't know. I think at this point we're supposed to be happy for what William has done to this captain, because he's getting to suffer. But I'm just stuck on, so you wanted thousands of black people to be chopped up and sewed into his body so that he would suffer. That was your idea of punishment for the captain? Like, but I don't know. Maybe that's why I decided on the one death. I don't know. I don't know what to think of him. Or her. Christina William. I don't know. Moving on. We switch to Montrose, who is drinking some, moonshine that George made when Tick finds him. And they talk a bit about George when, what I predicted comes up. Montrose mentions that George might be Tick's father. This messes Tick up because, when he was little, he used to get beat by Montrose and wish that George was his father, and now he might be. And, of course, he's also dead. This is a bit messed up. And then Hippolyta returns. She just walks into the garage. Okay, so that loose end also tied up. No idea how she got there. No explanation is ever given. I mean, okay, she does tell them about the portal, but why didn't she come back at the same moment as Tick? Why did she, where did she come back to? Or did she just, appear at the door of this garage? Or did she appear at the observatory and then have to walk back? I don't know. It doesn't matter. They don't explain it, and it feels weird and sudden to me. But, okay, whatever. She's here. She's the closest relative, so that problem is also just solved. The ritual begins, and Dee is all done up to look like one of the ghost girls, except for some reason, it doesn't look as gory on her. I don't know why. Those girls looked terrifying. Dee looks like she's in some, really weird clown makeup. Anyway, the maggots start crawling outside of her arm, and then there's this weirdness where we can hear a lot of flies, but we don't really see any, and then Dee's fine. And her arm is fine. Done. Another loose end, done. Or, okay, mostly done, because I still need the Book of Names to finish it, but okay, we're done. After the ritual, Ruby goes to leave with Christina, and Letty tries to stop her, telling her, don't trust Christina, but Ruby points out that Christina hasn't actually tried to hurt either of them. In fact, she's actually helped both of them. But Letty brings up the equinox and how if Tick has to go willingly, then whatever Christina has planned is probably going to kill him. Ruby thinks about this and then just leaves. Anyway, Hippolyta is trying to figure out how to save Dee. She knows she needs the book, and so she says that she's going back to the time machine. That's not a time machine, which she can fix using super tech that she, I guess, brought back with her. So, okay, they're headed to the observatory. Just don't question it. They're just doing it. Back at Christina's house, Ruby asks about who the white woman was before she ended up in a coma. So I guess she's not dead? Does that mean that William isn't dead either? They look pretty damn dead to me, but a coma is not dead, so I'm not sure what this is about. But anyway, Ruby then confronts Christina about being used, to try and get to Tick, but Christina points out that she has never once asked Ruby about Tick, that she went to the house because Ruby asked, and she just saw an opportunity and took it, that's all. Ruby then straight up asks Christina if she plans to kill Tick, and Christina admits it. She says she needs all of his blood to complete her immortality spell, so yeah. I do appreciate her honesty, actually. Ruby makes her promise to not hurt Letty, and Christina agrees. And I kind of believe her. Ruby then does something to whatever is hooked up to the white woman, and I think it's actually meant to be that she's finally killing her, because she says that, whenever she used to imagine herself as white, she always imagined herself as a redhead, and Christina smiles slightly, so I'm guessing they're going shopping for a redhead now. Meanwhile, the others arrive at the observatory where the, time machine is not a time machine is, and Montrose is still drinking that moonshine and having flashbacks. Hippolyta is fixing the machine, and Montrose and Letty have a talk. So she now knows that Tick knows that she's pregnant because he went to the future, and he also tells her that Tick is going to die when Christina does her spell. So, okay, it's another couple of loose ends tied, so we are ready for next week. They get the machine working, and then Hippolyta uses herself as a, quote-unquote motherboard. Bit heavy-handed with the metaphor there, wouldn't you say? But anyway, she hooks the machine into those like purple things in her arms and sends them back with the standard warning about, protecting the timeline. And they jump back to Tulsa, 1921. Okay, so this is the first couple of these scenes where there is what I would call manufactured tension. Tick and Letty jump through, and Montrose is all traumatized because, of course, he lived through the massacre. So he's not exactly eager to go back, so he just waits and waits and takes his sweet-ass time before jumping through. Did you think that he wasn't going to jump through? Because, of course, he was going to. I don't know. It felt manufactured. And, of course, it was on a rewatch that I suddenly had the thought of, why the hell did they go back to the night of the massacre? That makes no sense. They could have gone back to before that, just not on a night when there's going to be chaos and danger. This is obviously so they can show the massacre for us, the viewers, but narratively, it's a stupid choice for the characters to have made. It might have had something to do with, like, there's a picture that Hippolyta uses to triangulate or whatever, but it feels hella contrived to me. And then there's this, like, reveal of the past through the window, and this is one of those minutes that I think was supposed to feel like something, but it doesn't, because the show already takes place in the past, so them going a couple of decades further into the past doesn't really feel like anything. Oh, the cars are a little bit older. Neat. Anyway, they get some period-appropriate clothing and start heading to Tick's family's home. And then there's a weird thing where they tell Letty that she has to be the one to go to the door because they won't recognize her. And they won't recognize anyone in this group. Montrose was a kid at the time, so they wouldn't recognize him as an adult. Tick didn't exist, so they wouldn't recognize him either. So I don't know what the point of that was. They're trying to make plans when Tick realizes that his dad's a bit drunk and goes off on him, saying, that once they've saved Dee, he's done with Montrose. And I think I would care about this more if I was more attached to either of them. But as I've said before, Tick is a murderer and Montrose was an abusive father. I know they both have tragic backstories, but those tragic backstories are they're the only reason I don't outright hate either of them, but I'm also just not rooting for either of them. Anyway, they finally arrive at the house just in time to witness young Montrose being beat by his dad for trying on his older brother's coat. Tick's mom, young Tick's mom, comes out of her house, which is right next door to Montrose's, and then there's to protect him, and then Montrose's dad goes inside, Montrose runs off, and then there's a sweet moment between young George and young Tick's mom. Tick turns to say something to his dad, but Montrose is gone. Young George and young Tick's mom go to look for young Montrose, and old Tick says that they got to do the same thing because they think Montrose has gone to warn young George about the future. Tick and Letty prepare to split up, with Tick going after his dad and Letty going to the house to get the book. Just as they do, they hear gunshots, so the riots have started. We then switch to Montrose, and it's nighttime suddenly. Not sure how. He's breaking into places with a baseball bat that he found to steal some liquor. And then we're back to Letty, and the sudden nighttime makes no sense, because she was literally across the street from the house that she was headed to in the last scene, and it was daylight. Now it's dark, and she's being chased down the street, not across it, down the street, toward the house that she wants to get to she's being chased by these white thugs. And it makes no sense direction-wise, but all right, whatever. Someone from inside the house comes out with a gun to scare off the white guys, and then they invite Letty in for safety. Inside the house, they're trying to figure out what's going on, but one of the women notices Letty's non-period appropriate footwear and gets suspicious. But they all arm themselves and they prepare to fight. Tick finds Montrose at a park and tells him that he can't warn George about the future, but that wasn't Montrose's plan. He tells Tick about a boy named Thomas that he met that night at a park, basically to break up with him. Thomas is about to get shot in the head, and Montrose wants to save him. Tick says he can't because then Tick probably wouldn't exist, and neither would his future son. And okay, there's a lot of talking here about how much Montrose sacrificed of himself, and he just wanted to be a father, to be Tick's father. And it's kind of touching, but it goes on for way longer than feels natural. It's another moment, I feel, of manufactured tension. I never once thought that Montrose was going to save Thomas. It was just talk to give us more of Montrose's backstory. It felt contrived. Back at the house, Letty is rifling around trying to find, the Book of Names, when that woman who noticed her shoes before finds her and asks her who she really is. Letty decides to go for the truth and tells her she's from the future and she's here for the Book of Names. She proves it by drawing the family birthmark. And, okay, is this a magical thing? Because, are birthmarks passed down through family naturally? I mean, the shape of birthmarks? I'm not a birthmarkologist, I guess, or anything, but that doesn't seem like it's a thing to me. I could be wrong. Let me know if I'm wrong. But anyway, okay, this woman isn't an idiot and realizes that if they had to come from the future for this book, that the book must have been destroyed. And that means that they're likely about to die tonight. She asks Letty, what happens in order to try and protect herself, but Letty gives her a breakdown of the future and says that they can't change it. Back at the park, Montrose watches Thomas get shot in the head again, and it is quite heartbreaking. In the house, the woman opens a secret compartment and gives Letty the book, as well as a special code word in order to open it. She tells Letty to leave, but Letty says she's invulnerable, so she stays. In the park, young George and young Tick's mom show up, and there's a brawl between all of the three of them and then the white adults who are beating up a bunch of kids. And Montrose begins to recite the tale of how they were saved in this moment by a stranger with a baseball bat. And yeah, I knew exactly what was about to happen. Tick steps forward and his foot hits a baseball bat, the baseball bat his father had earlier, and ooh, the mysterious man was Tick all along. Not exactly surprised. Tick goes and busts some heads and saves his mom and his two dads. In the house, Letty and the woman begin to pray as the house burns. And then another spoken word poem. This one is called Catch the Fire by Sonia Sanchez, and it begins to play over this scene. And on a rewatch, I was able to pay more attention to the poem, and it is a beautiful poem. But I have to say that on my first watch, I barely heard it. I was way too distracted by the weird choice made in this scene. And by choice, I mean an acting choice or maybe a directorial choice. I'm not sure who it was that made this choice, but okay. The house is burning, and this woman catches fire. We see her, her limbs are burning, her face starts burning, and she just stands there. Her mouth is open, so we can presume that she's screaming, but people don't just stand in place while their bodies burn. This is not a human response. And this woman is supposed to be a human woman, not magic. I don't know if this was supposed to be look how strong, how resolute this woman is, even in the face of burning alive. I don't know. It just really distracted me. Fire causes pain. Pain is pain. People react to pain. It distracted me so much from the beauty of the poem that I didn't even hear it the first time. Montrose and Tick make it back to the room with the portal in it, but Letty isn't there. And Montrose says there's something wrong with the portal. I am not sure how he could tell, but all right, whatever. Tick jumps through, and Hippolyta is straining hard, foaming at the mouth, saying that she can't keep it open much longer. And I know this is supposed to be tense, but of course she's going to succeed. I was not worried at all. Even, the portal closes, I knew it would open again. This was, Scotty from Star Trek here. Montrose, who's alone in the room now, looks out over the street and monologues. He starts just listing some of the horrors of the massacre, and who the fuck is he talking to? This monologue is very, very clearly for us. This is very obviously the Tulsa Massacre isn't taught in school, so here's the facts moment. And it's ham-fisted. The actor is doing a good job, but there is no way to make this scene natural, in my opinion. In a play, maybe, but not in a TV show. It makes no sense. The portal opens again, of course, because Hippolyta gave it, more power in a scene that I think was supposed to be, look at her go, but it looked silly to me. Her use of this power, though, does turn her hair blue, so now she looks like the hero from her daughter's comic book, so that's cool. And then we see why Montrose had time to give that weird monologue, because Letty is walking very, very unnaturally slowly through the streets of Tulsa. She knows that Dee needs the book to survive. She's just slowly walking. Again, this is very obviously to give us, the viewers, time to view the carnage. It's just so contrived. And then they're through the portal and the episode is done. And so yeah, there were moments in this episode that worked, but there was a lot of it that felt contrived to me. In fact, a lot of the meat of the episode felt contrived. In fact, the whole episode felt written in order to showcase the horrors of the Tulsa Massacre. So, what the characters did or said, it felt sort of molded and twisted to make it fit, resulting in scenes that didn't make sense timeline-wise or direction-wise or spatial-wise, dialogue and scenes that felt forced. Which is why I think this episode was just a little better than just okay for me. I'm all for stories that educate, but I still want the story to feel organic. Last week's episode, that felt organic to me. This one didn't. And maybe it's the comparison that's the problem. Maybe if last week's episode hadn't hit me so hard, I wouldn't have noticed the shortcomings in this one. But, well, it did. And so I did. So yeah, that's where I will stop for today. Let me know what you thought in the comments below. And join my Discord if you want to talk about it further. And if you want to support me making videos, you can check out my Patreon. Links to both of those will be in the description below. I do think next week is the finale, so I am excited for that. So, as always, like, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye!